Lord, yeah, Ultra Lord. Yeah, I just
Okay,
started
okay.
recording.
Perfect.
I just started recording. Okay, so we're good. We're good on that front at least.
Okay. I'm gonna
It doesn't seem.
yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
all good. No worries. Thanks for your help.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll just start with like general thoughts about the episode. So, Lady Miz, what did you think of this third episode that we've just had?
Oh, I would say honestly, I think it's probably my favorite episode of this season already. I think because it brought me back to like the old days of Game of Thrones, those early seasons where you get those episodes where it's not a whole lot of action going on, but it tells you so much about the characters. It's really building them up, where they're at, what they're thinking. So I enjoyed this episode as a whole a lot.
Yeah, I really did too. I think this was a very sort of character based episode.
Mhm.
A lot of discussions were happening. We got a lot of new sort of introductions. I think I really enjoyed that we spent time with the Dragon twins, Bela and Reina, this episode. I
Yeah.
think they've been sort of neglected, and so it's good to sort of see their storyline sort of blooded in. A bit sad that we didn't hear from Jace much this episode. But I think
Yeah.
he's gonna probably come to the fore, I'd imagine, quite soon. Um, but yeah, I think it was really nice to sort of get some more sort of scenes with some supporting cast. I think the show is doing really well. I think last season was kind of a little bit down on that. Like we didn't really spend a lot of time with the supporting cast, so it's really good to see that they're really like embracing this bigger nature of the
Yeah.
second season with giving the non-major players more to do, I think.
Yeah, it's like
Um
it's gotten bigger. The world has gotten bigger finally. We've spread out. We're seeing other locations. So it's getting exciting.
what was your favorite moment of the episode, do you think?
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to say. Um, I don't know. I really did like the cold opening, honestly, with the burning mill and whatnot. I love the way they played that where we didn't necessarily have to see the whole battle. Everything
Mhm.
that we knew about, the people involved and it was a micro, cosm of what's going on in all of Westeros, right? Picking sides and ultimately it doesn't matter really what size you pick. It's we're going for all our destruction. So I really liked that cold opening. I thought it really set the tone about what the whole episode was trying to portray. Um, yeah, I would say that was probably my favorite part of the episode.
Just a reminder, if any of you guys want to come up to the stage, raise your hand. I figured out how to do it now, so I can add you into the stage. Um, we'll probably need to some more voices besides just mine and Miz's voices up here.
Definitely. There you
So
go.
oh, we got some hands already. Uh, let's see if I can figure out how to do this, cause there we go. That should work now. If you guys can,
Hello?
Steve is up here. What's up, Steve?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing?
How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Can you guys hear me
We're-
fine?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Um,
Oh, awesome, awesome.
hello, Sarah. Is that how you say your name? Is
Yeah,
this
it,
is it?
it's like
Yeah.
Sarah, but I spell it differently to not get confused with other Sarahs.
Smart.
I like it.
I like that. Quite. You have a very interesting username.
Oh,
Because
it's
I
because
just
there was
realized.
that guy that was trying to be me. He pretended to be me, so I had to change my identity so that you could tell me apart. Um, and I haven't changed it
That
back.
that is strange, but all right. Well, I think you've actually jogged my memory, Lazy Misery. You've jogged my memory about the opening because I forgot how
Yeah.
the episode opened, but now I do remember it opened with the burning mill, which is also the title of the episode is the burning mill.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people who probably, I mean, we're not doing book spoilers. I'm not allowed to do that, unfortunately. But if I was going to do that, then I'd tell you more about what the burning mill actually means. But it's a good sort of, like you said, it's a really good opening because it sort of shows you the effects of like the horrors of war and how it can start from something really petty and silly and small and just escalate into this massive brutal, I mean, just basically just a field of dead bodies, really. These two
Yeah.
families who've just been fighting, looking for an excuse to fight over something, and they found it, and it's caused so many deaths and stuff like that. So I really liked how the show chose to do that. You don't need to show every battle, and I think the way that they showed this one
Mhm.
was really smart. Steve, what did you think of the cold open of episode 3?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely enjoyed it. I thought it was really smart from a production point of view as well, because they don't need to spend too much on a big budget battle, but at the same time, you've got the end result as well. All the Riverland people just like dead with swords in their faces and stuff like that, just to show how, horrifying it is. But one of the things I really found interesting as well was the when it comes to Aegon and Rhaenyra is urging restraint, but it's her council urging her to war. But with Aegon, it's the exact opposite. Their council are the
Yeah.
one who are telling him to chill, but he is the one wanting to go to war, and that felt like it started with this one battle. So I felt like it like this lets you know what the stakes are pretty well and pretty quickly as well. So I I'm really glad they did that scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, what did you think of it? The cold
Um,
open.
I don't really know what happens in the books, especially with the other. Well, I do kind of know, but for me, I thought it really helped with. There seems to be a theme in the show, about kind of like the meaninglessness of war and like the casualties it has, and I think the opening scene also helps with like they've been touching on it in every episode a little bit about how like I know they aren't really small folk, but how like the regular people that aren't just the Targaryen slash like Hightower families are getting pulled into this. And I think, like you guys were saying, how they were just itching to fight, and then it was kind of like the spark that got him. I think, in a way, that is kind of similar to how, like, that's kind of what's happening to like the main family, right? Like Aegon and what's Aegon? Sorry, Aemond and Lucerys. I feel like that's like a spark, and they've been kind of itching to fight. And the second that Aemond like saw him, he took the chance, right? And it caused like a terrible thing, and it reminded me somewhat of like these men are like ready to fight, right? And they take the first chance that they get to like get into violence, and then look what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I think the interesting thing about this is like, we actually did have a mention of so I don't know if you guys remember this, but from episode 4, we were actually already introduced to the Blackwoods and the Brackens.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, last
So
season. Yeah,
Are they
we
the
know
like the
them.
younger people that were trying to get married to Rhaenyra? It's
yeah,
Yes,
weird.
they
exactly.
were.
Okay.
The two that
So
fought.
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha.
yeah, they were the ones that fought. So the guy who was taunting the guy that was like trying to be Rhaenyra's suitor, he was a Bracken, and Rhaenyra's suitor who ended up killing him, the little boy, he was a Blackwood and stuff like that. And so the Blackwoods end up siding with Rhaenyra and the Brackens with Aegon. So it's interesting to sort of see how, these two sort of families throughout sort of history and stuff like that have just been looking for any excuse to oppose each other. Like they're never on the same side about anything.
Yeah,
They're
and the bitter irony is that they're both basically one blood because they've both been intermarrying so many times as well. You've had so many kings who've tried to make peace through marriages, so they're basically just one bloodline itself, but they still can't stop fighting either.
Mm.
They all love
Yeah,
the drama.
they're here for the drama. They're here for the
Hmm.
blood and the vibes. But I actually found it interesting as well because it seemed to me as though they've actually kind of flipped things as well in terms of like in the first season, the Bracken guy was the one who was kind of a bit more of an, well, excuse my French, a bit more of an asshole. Whereas in this season, it seems as though the Blackwood guy was the one who was actually instigating the fight. So I actually like that because I think
Hmm.
sometimes the show has a tendency, and that goes for Game of Thrones as well. The show has a tendency to paint every single character that belongs to a particular family with the same brush. Like we know that a Lannister is bad and the Starks are good and all that sort of stuff. But I like how through the generations you can go from a sort of honorable Blackwood to maybe an asshole Blackwood and stuff like that, and vice versa with the Brackens and stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't really even really know who's in the right and who's in the wrong, and that's sort of the major theme underpinning the whole show. So, Lady Miz, do you by any chance remember what the first scene after that was? Because I do not.
After that, we cut to the Green Council. And
We
that's
did.
where they're kind of discussing, Aegon's ready to go
Actually,
to
after that
war.
was
And
Eric and Eric's funeral, I think.
oh,
Yeah,
you're
I
correct.
think
You're
so.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, the Green Council is I think the third scene. So I think the second
Yeah,
scene
exactly.
is Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, and they're burying Eric and Eric. Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about that actually, because Rhaenys brought up some interesting points, and this was where Rhaenys first mentioned the idea to Rhaenyra of appealing to Alicent Hightower. So, Steve, I think I'm going to start with you this time. What did you think of
Yeah.
Rhaenys's plan? You
Well,
know,
I think her plan was dumb. It kind of gave me the White Hunt vibes, you know. Uh, like, even though I was a really big fan of like the character work and the final scene, the plan to like find a way to find peace through Alicent, I don't know, it didn't really sit really well with me. I understand what they wanted to show and portray and how they want to do it. I just thought they could have gone about it in a better way. I feel like you've got like two dead children on either sides. Like the time for diplomacy it's kind of past. But if you really still do want to keep peace, I'm pretty sure you can find better ways to do it than by a face-to-face meeting with, somebody who has such a high stake in the game. But at the same time, I still love the character work, though. I love the fact that she brought up the fact that when it comes to things like these, people just tend to forget what is the reason it all started. I thought that was a really important point to make that she made really well.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think one thing that you can always rely on Rhaenys for is some banger quotes. Whether or not they're hypocritical or not is besides the point. But she knows how to speak well. Does that lady?
Yeah.
Speaking of, so we'll come to you, Lady Miz. What did you think of just the overall scene, not just the Rhaenys bit? What did you think of that whole scene with the burying of Eric and Eric?
I did like how Jace immediately was like that, one is shouldn't be buried with the other. He has no honor, something along that line. I thought that was a good point, because that's so typical of what a lot of the men in this show really always think. It's really, they believe this honor is like really black and white. So it was nice to have that inflection when you're dealing with two, the moment had the two women trying to really, calm it down. But it was just another example of how people are just so adamant, this honor that's black and white. It blows my mind. And also, I also thought, and you're right about Rainey's with her little one-liners and bangers, but when she was like, threw it back at Rhaenyra, was like, just like you ordered a little boy killed, threw it right back on her, like just as easily as everyone's blaming them, were you the one that ordered that, I did love that scene. I thought it was great.
Sarah, what did you think of it?
I don't remember this as much, but I did think it was interesting how she brought like everything back. This is something you guys have already mentioned. She brought it all the way back to like Aemon and Lucerys' eyes. But I thought it was interesting how she didn't. Maybe she wasn't there for it, but she didn't bring it back even farther, because I guess that isn't what people think is the start of the war. They think, or like the start of like the opposition, I guess is the better word, is back when like Alicent wore the dress or started to have the kids. But I guess it wouldn't really make sense because, sorry, I'm a bit of a yapper. Uh, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree actually. It's interesting that you bring that up. I think Rhaenys was there because that was the wedding between Laenor and Rhaenyra. So I think Rhaenys was definitely there. She was part of the sort of
yeah,
Velaryon
she must have been.
contingent. Yeah, I don't think she would have missed that, but I think it's possible that she didn't realize or pick
Like
up on the
perceive it, yeah.
significance of the moment, because I don't think she knew, maybe like, because it was the Strongs who sort of picked up on that, specifically sort of Laris and Harwin who picked up on the significance of the green dress and stuff like that. But I'm not sure that Rainy's sort of been paying much attention to that, to be honest.
Right.
But
I
it's
think
interesting that you.
there's also I think there's some things. I wonder if she feels guilt for kind of the death of Lucerys, considering that she arguably could have prevented it by killing all of the high towers during the coronation. Arguably, if she did burn them, arguably she could have stopped it. And I think it's kind of interesting how she is kind of talking about peace without, and the show hasn't also talked about how she did kill a lot of people during the whole coronation thing. Like she came up and
I
did a little
think.
bit of a splatter. But that just might not be her priorities, which I get that. She's very much been thinking about her own family throughout the entire thing. And you go girl. You do what you need. But
Yeah, I
sometimes
think that
when they're talking about non-violence, I'm like, okay, well we have done a little bit. We've been violencing a lot already. At this point, I guess you don't want to put the nukes around, but
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. So I think we should probably get on to the Green Council now. I think that sort of scene started off with Kristen in his new role as Hand of the King. So he's sort of on his long walk to the small council, and we see that he's not really very respected by the Kingsguard and stuff like that. The people that he's supposed to be Lord Commander
are you
of, which,
still here?
which is yeah. Can you hear me? Hello, can you
Yeah,
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
I
you
can
good.
hear you.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
hear you.
All right, good. Um, yeah, we was gonna say about Kristen because he was on his way. Obviously, new Hand of the King, Kristen Cole, is on his way to the small council, but he encounters some Kingsguard who are less than impressed with him. And I think that's kind of
Right? Oh, I
interesting
feel like
to note.
were
no, I
those
feel
Go
the
like
for it.
same
I'm not
two?
impressed with them. Like that was Kingsguard ever. Like he just went off in the episode before about
Yeah.
Eric having a little speck of dirt, and now these guys are just doing whatever. Crazy.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he sort of he comes through and obviously they're not respecting him and stuff like that, and he goes up to the small council, takes a seat, and it's pretty evident that people seem to think that his idea of sending Eric basically to his death was really dumb. And now he's sort of facing some backlash from the council for that. So I guess my question to you guys is, what do you think the small council thinks about Kristen now being the Hand of the King? How do you think they're going to approach those meetings now that he's in that role? I'll start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I think most of the characters over there, like Jasper Wild, Thailand, etc., I think they're all kind of in it for themselves anyway. So they would probably have hoped that if they probably respected Otto Hightower anyway. So the fact that it wasn't Otto Hightower the fact that Aegon fired him, they were probably expecting that one of them should have been the hand instead. So for them. So there's multiple factors at play as well. One, Kristen isn't an administrator or an academic. Two, he's just a fighter, you know. And three, he's also pretty fairly lowborn as well. So they've got that elitism factor as well. So I don't think they're absolutely at all happy with it, but there's not much they can really do about it, right?
True.
They saw what happened to the other guy that started yapping.
Yeah.
Kristen bonked his head into the little ball.
Right?
Yeah.
But also, Kristen's gonna be gone. Like he left by the end of the episode, so I'm curious. I can't wait to see how really crazy the Green Council gets because they're not even gonna have a hand there to, to even organize him if he could. Not that I think he could get him in control, but even that's going to be even more chaos. And then how much longer until Aegon's just itching to get out on Sunfire and go to war, and Aemond is the biggest weapon in Westeros. So I'm just curious, like soon we're going to have what, Alicent and Ironrod and the Lannister running the council, like
Right.
they're all going to be
Yeah,
gone. It's
It's gonna be a
worrisome.
very empty council.
Right.
Yeah,
And
who's watching the kingdom?
the Greens already seemed really split, at least in a family dynamic way. Like in
Yeah,
the last episode, even with Otto, they seemed really split and like they were struggling to agree really even within themselves. And now Otto, who was kind of like the big planner, the big brain behind it all, is gone. And you can see in the episode that they really can't, like, they're all just yelling within each other, right? So I
hmm
can't imagine, especially now that they're losing people, like you guys said, that that's gonna get any better. Like, and also if I was one of the other people on the councils and I saw Aegon, who is not qualified to be king, get up there, and then I saw Kristen, who is honestly not qualified to be handed the king, be up there, I'd be like, oh, we are cooked. Oh no, this is
right.
miserable.
I punch my ticket straight to Team Black and be like, "Yep, okay, I'm done."
Yeah, how you guys doing over here?
Yeah, they've got to have it better. But I mean, honestly, is the Back Council like doing any better? I don't even think she's named a hand as
No,
of yet.
and her council doesn't seem to respect her. I mean, they don't seem to respect her at all, like just because she's a woman, right? Like a lot of them
Yeah,
are like,
especially
if you
the
want to go to like
what
a
is his
safe
name, Bruin.
house, right? So
I
at
Yeah,
least I guess the Green Council doesn't just completely ignore Aegon, but or like just doesn't take what he says to be like the true ruling. But they're probably like, oh, he's a little bit of a loose cannon.
So I
yeah.
think that's you actually brought up a really interesting point, and it sort of segues into something that I wanted to sort of discuss as well. But you actually brought up a really interesting point, which is that the Black Council doesn't seem to really have a very official hand of the Queen right now. We don't
Right.
really have a clearly defined second in command to Rhaenyra, and I think that's a really interesting point because I think it sort of feeds into why Rhaenyra seems to constantly be fighting members of her own council and stuff like that. And I think it's really interesting to see. I mean, even though the Green Council is very dysfunctional and stuff like that, and they're constantly at each other's throats, they do seem to have more of a defined structure at the
Right.
moment than the
Yeah,
Black Council,
definitely.
and it should be interesting to see because I'm not entirely sure that the Black Council minus Rhaenyra and Rhaenys would be as competent as the Green Council minus Aegon and Kristen, because I honestly don't think Aegon and Kristen add much to that, to be
No,
honest.
they almost detract. I would say they may be able to get some stuff done. That's why I'm so interested on how that's going to play out. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I would agree. The Black Council is like, I'm hoping, my hope would be anyway, like it seemed this episode ended with Rhaenyra really coming to terms with what she needed to do next, like where this was going from here, and I'm hoping that that will manifest in her really taking control of being queen and grabbing it by the horns and just going for it and getting that council. I'm hoping. So hopefully we see that.
Right, and I think her counsel also a lot of times when her counsel speaks to her, they're a bit condescending, right? Like she
Oh,
is
definitely.
much more. I would think of Rhaenyra as much more willing to listen to her counsel than Aegon ever would be, right? Like Aegon doesn't listen to anybody. He's his own thing. But the only person Rhaenyra listened to Rhaenys, right? And Rhaenys was just coming at her kind of like woman to woman, mother to mother,
Hmm.
and she actually listened. I think maybe the rest of her council could get things across better if they didn't keep coming at her like she was like a little princess that didn't know what was going on. Even if that's how they think she is, right? Like y'all gotta hide it better than that.
Right.
So
At least
that
pretend.
really sets up. Yeah, that sets up the sort of next portion of the episode. I mean, I wanted to talk specifically about the Black Council because we do have a couple of scenes with the Black Council in this episode. Specifically, Sir Alfred Broom, I think, has been
Yeah,
sort of. I think if you guys know who I'm talking about, Sir Alfred is the guy
I
who
do.
keeps
Yeah.
sort of egging Rhaenyra on and being a bit sort of antagonistic towards her, and he was the one who I think initially was talking to her. I think in episode 2 like asking her like was she like responsible for blood and cheese and stuff like that. So I
Hmm.
think he's treading on some thin ice, is
He
Sir Alfred.
is. He's
Yeah,
obsessed with the
Why do you think that
dragons.
is?
I think, well, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he comes from Dragonstone, correct? Like he's one of their vassals, so he doesn't come from, the Westeros, the mainland, and um, he should be more of a, a Targaryen loyalist given that. But it seems, in that same sense, it seems because he's familiar with the dragons, because he's from dragons, like he's the one that's always, well, send the dragons, let's go send the dragons. And um, I'm wondering if that comes from, because he has a little more familiarity, I think, with the Targaryens from being their direct vassal than some of the other people do. And I don't know. I'm wondering. I just don't trust him. I like, that's my feeling of him. Like I don't trust him. I'm almost like, what is he up to? Like, why is he so quick to want the dragons? Everybody's got to know that, like, they're nukes. We all go when we call them in. Like and it blows my mind. Like I'm inclined not to trust him.
Yeah, I
Steve, what do
think
you think about the relationship that Rhaenyra seems to have with her council? You know, it seems to be like inherently antagonistic almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
I
great. Like one of the things is also these aren't like super major lords either. These are minor lords from around the Crownlands.
mm-hmm.
And so like I don't think they are also really used to being sitting at a council with queens and kings, etc.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That is a good
Yeah,
point. Yeah. Where you have on the Green Council, this council existed in that manner prior to all these people served under, Viserys, and the council
exactly.
already
Yeah.
existed in that manner. So Aegon was walking into a structured setting where he already, yeah, he had a master of coins, a master of ships, the Grand Maester, all of those things, and Rhaenyra is kind of coming up on the back foot. She's still not done that. So yeah, I would agree. Like they're way more used to it than Rhaenyra's council is.
Yeah.
right. I think it also might depend on like why he is necessarily supporting Rhaenyra, because he might not truly respect her or think of her as like a true queen. He might just be like, I don't know, maybe there is an answer to this and I just missed it. Maybe he could just be like honoring the oath, right? Because some of these lords just really care about the old oath they made to Rhaenyra slash
Hmm.
Viserys back when he was still alive, but they might not actually like think of her as like a rightful queen, if that makes sense, right? They're still like a woman queen. I don't know about that, but they made the oath, so they're gonna honor it, right? So that also might depend on like why he's actually supporting her.
True, that's a good point. Some people, even though they will honor that oath, they don't necessarily agree with it. It kind of goes back to that, her being the queen that we chose versus the queen that was there and I had to, be loyal to.
Hmm.
All right, so we got for one thing, we got a lot of hands raised. I'm not sure
Oh
if this is
yeah.
a glitch. I'm not sure
Yeah,
if that's a
I'll
glitch
actually
because
I'll actually bow out of this one now, and I'm more than happy to listen while somebody else wants to talk as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm the
myself
same.
yeah,
as
I mean
well. If
absolutely.
someone else is ready,
My
I'd love
dinner
to
is
hear
almost
other
ready,
opinions too.
so
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so if anybody else wants to come up, I can see some hands are still raised. Um, I mean, if you keep your hands raised, then I'll bring you up. So I can see we've got Rivosk. So let's see if we can bring you guys all up. Oh, it says invite already sent. So was Loretti the one here? Loretti, did you send that? Oh, I don't know if I unjoined by accident. I think yeah. So somebody already sent these invites. Which means it doesn't really allow me to bring them up on stage. The invites are already been sent. So if you guys wanna hop up, then you can. Because the invite has been sent to you. Um, but yeah. So I think in the meantime, we'll sort of transition the discussion once I can get somebody up here. Let's send some invites to the people that I haven't already invited. Um, for some reason, none of these invites seem to be working, which is a bit confusing. Hmm. Hang on. Yeah, I think once invite is sent, it doesn't let you resend it, unfortunately. Oh, okay. Someone's up here. Hey, Revosk. Lou, can you hear me? I can't. If you're talking, I can't hear you. You there? Do you want to maybe try disconnecting and rejoining? Because I can't hear you. Can't hear you. All right, I think I'm gonna. Ooh, you muted and unmuted yourself. Are you talking now? Because I can't hear you. All right, I'm gonna disconnect you. You can try and rejoin. All right, let's invited you up, so you can accept that when you're ready, and see if it works this time. All right, you there? I think your audio might not be working, unfortunately. Um, hey, if any of you guys are able to hop back up, that would be really nice, because I think we might be having some technical difficulties otherwise. So I'm gonna send an invite back to Steve, and Lady Miz, I'll send you back up as well. And yeah,
Yeah, got it.
all right, welcome back up. Yeah, I mean we're
Thanks.
we're a pretty small group today. It doesn't
That's
seem like a
all
lot of
good.
people doesn't seem like a lot of people are around, so it's probably for the best if you guys stick around in here, even if you like maybe can't talk if you're busy and stuff like that. You can come on a bit later on. But yeah, for now, I think we're still right at the beginning in terms of talking about the episode. Obviously, I was talking about um the Black Council, talking about I think I wanted to kind of segue into talking about Jace really quick. I think the reason I wanted to talk about Jace is because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's been some tension between him and his mom, I think.
Oh,
I'm just wondering if you guys have picked up on it. There seems to be a little bit of bubbling resentment or anger from Jace this season.
yeah, definitely. I feel like you always see him in the background too, like with his hand on his sword. He's kind of just itching to go, and I felt you could tell he felt some type of way about her allowing Bela to go and not really him. So yeah, these
Yeah,
Knights of Summer, they're always ready to go to war, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I
I
think,
feel that too. The youth thing.
Right.
yeah, I mean, he's a young lad, is Jace. But I think he really wants to step up this season. He wants to. Oh, we're getting some more requests. Let's see if I can add somebody up here. Oh, Sarah wants to come back in. I've invited her up.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, so Jace, I think there's definitely some irritation there. I think he wants to be more involved than he is.
Mhm.
I think he's restless, and he might also be disagreeing with some of the decisions that Rhaenyra is making. So I think the interesting sort of discussion that can come from that is Jace is Rhaenyra's heir. Like he has quite a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and he's in a position where his mom is making some questionable decisions. So I want to
Mhm.
start with Steve. I want to start with Steve. Where do you think Jace goes from here now? Like he has a
I have a
certain
feel.
level of power.
Yeah, I have a feeling in the next episode, if like people, if the council or the blacks find out that Rhaenyra went to King's Landing, I have a feeling Jace is gonna be very, very, very angry. Like he's gonna lash out or something. Like,
Oh,
like these are the like for all her warnings and for all her everything, caution and stuff like that. How could she do something that dumb? Like that's just a theory of mine. Whether or not that plays out, it's not like something from the books or anything like that. So it's just something I think is gonna happen.
oh, like that's a good point. I haven't really thought
Mm.
about that, about what the fallout is going to be, or how Jace would feel about that. But that's a good point. That is going to be interesting to see how they address that, or if they'll even know that she went. Like, who even
Mm.
knew? It's going to be cool to see how they play that.
Yeah, I
I
think
can't
he'll be
see.
the only one who finds out, and
So
maybe he
Yeah,
what
finds out through some weird sleuthy way or something like that.
yeah,
what
maybe
I will
catches her
say,
coming back.
not not to interrupt you guys, but what I will say actually is that that's actually reminded me of something really interesting. So I don't know if you guys were following the promo material prior to this season and stuff like that, but they released some promotional photos. And one of the promotional photos actually had Jace over the council table, and standing next to him was Mizaria. And that's quite interesting
Oh,
because we've never seen Jace and Mizaria interact before, but the fact that they were standing right next to each other in that material suggests they might have an interaction this season. And if
Right.
Mizaria is the one that tells Jace what his mom has gotten up to, that might be an interesting source of conflict there.
Oh yeah, she's definitely in the position to do so, and especially now that she's going to be sitting on the council, right? She's sticking
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
So there's a lot of potential, I think, for those two to interact. I'm interested to see a lot of interactions with Massaria. Like, how is the way the council is not? I feel like they're not excited about having women on the council in general. A woman queen. So, how excited are they going to be about? You already have Rainey's and Rhaenyra, and now we're going to add Massaria, who again is of low birth and questionable backgrounds and whatnot. It's going to be interesting. It's going to
Yeah,
be
if they don't
really
respect
interesting.
her
Absolutely.
queen, how are they gonna treat like a woman that was a prostitute and that's how she got her way
Right.
up? Like, uh, well, I guess we'll see. Also, I can't imagine that anybody else on the team finding out what Rhaenyra did. They'd be like, "You did what?" I can't imagine that's gonna blow over. Well, I would chew my mother out for like 10 days if I found out that's what
Right.
happened. Like, she would never hear the end of it.
I
I think it's going to
agree.
be really interesting to see if people do find out about Rhaenyra's little trip to King's Landing. Um, and to be fair, she would not have been like it's not like she can go there and be back in an hour. Like King's Landing is close, but it's gonna take her a while to get there and back. So people are gonna know that she's gone, and they're gonna know something's up. So I
Yeah.
think we could see some spicy scenes next
Oh,
episode between Rhaenyra and some of her council. But I want to sort of go into the next scene chronologically in this episode, which is we sort of go back to Rhaenyra, but she's with Rhaena, and she's sort of sending Rhaena off to I think it was well, it was eventually Pentos, but I think she
yeah.
started off by saying go to the Vale.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of talk about Rhaena a little bit because this is the first time we're really seeing Rhaena this season, or just in any season really. We're sort of getting some characterization from her. She wasn't happy with Rhaenyra's decision. So let's talk about sort of like what Rhaena's role is now, because she's been given a huge responsibility to take care of potential heirs to the throne and potential dragon lineage as well, in the form of all of those dragon eggs and stuff like that. So she's got a huge responsibility that's been passed on to her. So I just want to hear your thoughts about like what do you think like Raina is thinking right now about the responsibility that she's been given?
well, she's clearly not happy. I mean, I think there's a lot of insecurity there as well with her because she's not a dragon rider and stuff. And now, like when her sister and like her betrothed is dead, her sister's in the middle of a war. Everybody in her family is fighting, but now she has to be the babysitter to the babies, you know? I don't think she's happy about that at all.
Right. She reminds me a lot of Aemon because she also he like young Aemon who was like so desperate to
Mhm.
get a dragon because she's also like I don't think her relationship her dad barely treats like the daughter that he favored well. Like he ignored her, left her on red. I can't imagine he treats this daughter any better. I will say I am thankful to have more interactions of like Bela in general or Bela and Reina because I couldn't know who was who. That's how little we've seen them. I could not tell like
Right.
I could not remember their names. I desperately want more of like the interactions between all these people because I also want to know like what is Rhaenyra's like relationship with her in general because she's entrusting her children to this girl, right? Who's a child. And she wants her to
Yeah.
be their mother, which of course in our time it's different, but that's a lot of trust to give a girl that your stepdaughter that you've never.
Yeah. I think Rhaenyra is probably closer to Rhaena as well because um back in season 1, so Bela did a lot of she stayed on Driftmark with Rhaenys and was really, under her wing there, getting some experience while she was lording over Driftmark. And Rhaena's been with Rhaenyra since her and Daemon got married, or really since Lena died. So I think that may have played into why Rhaenyra was so trusting of her. By this point, she must know, what kind of girl she is and what kind of woman she's growing up to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, like Rhaenyra seems to be way more motherly as well as she's to Bela, it seems. But I could just be reading a little bit. Seems we haven't seen much of them, all their interaction together. But from what I've seen, it does seem like, yeah, like Rhaenyra or Rhaena's a little bit coddled too because she's not a dragon rider. And I did like that point you said about her almost being a foil for Aemond because of how late they came about riding dragons, and growing up within a whole family of dragon riders and what, you know. So I had never really thought of her character from that standpoint. So wow, like thinking of that, it makes me think like what frame of mind that put Aemond in, like, oh my gosh, like what's gonna happen with Rhaena when she does? Like, will she ride will she eventually be on a dragon? Does she have hatred for Aemon? Because remember, Aemon kind of stole her mama's dragon. Like she was gonna
Yeah.
get Vhagar because that was her mama's dragon. So I'm like, I wonder. So she has a little bit of that darkness that maybe we might see. It's kind of
Right.
bad for me to say. I almost hope to see
And
it,
he
but
killed her fiance.
oh,
She
there
must
you
hate
go.
Aemon. I cannot imagine that as a
Wow,
positive.
I didn't even think about that. Yes, you're so right. I didn't even snap about that. Yeah, like you got me on this whole nother train of thinking about Reina. I'm gonna be on this, looking out for her. Like I love it.
I
That's why
also
these little
wonder
chats are so good.
how they decided which sister would stay with Rhaenys, right? Because if I were me, right, maybe this is my thinking, I would give the daughter who doesn't have a dragon to like over to learn about ships because she doesn't have a dragon, but at least maybe she can like take in her family's lineage and the whole Valarian like sailing everywhere, and she could maybe learn how to do that because I don't know if it was this episode, but
That's what
Rhaenys and
Rainy.
Corlys talks, and he's like, girl
Yeah,
doesn't know anything about ships, but she arguably could have been taught a little bit if she was at
definitely.
Driftmark. I feel like that's kind of
I think
how did they decide who was gonna stay with Rhaenys?
I think it was because Bela's older, and Bela and Rhaenys was really going for, these two. The twins are biologically ours, 100%. So the
Right.
eldest was Bela, and she should, at primogeniture, the eldest should have went first. So I think that's where that thinking came from. Why it was Bela and not Rhaena, just an age thing. But it definitely, I think
I
that's
actually
why
think they probably
she's pushing for her now,
I actually think they probably should have done it the other way around.
right?
Because if you think about it, right, Lucerys was always Corlys's heir, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally, if Lucerys was betrothed to Rhaena, Rhaena should have been on Driftmark because that would have been where she would
Yeah.
end up living and stuff
Right.
like
Oh, right.
that. Whereas
She was already destined
Jace,
to be the lady. right? That's a good point.
Whereas Jace and Bela were betrothed, which means that really, logically speaking, Bela should have been where Jace was, right? Like I just
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think logically, yeah.
it doesn't really make sense. I think
Or
they
with
should have switched them around.
they really should have. And even having Bela with Rhaenyra, who's the queen, and what's Bela eventually gonna be, the queen, that would have made way more sense. You're absolutely correct.
Right. And I think it's interesting because it might have helped. I feel like Reina also has a little bit of like an identity issue with herself, right? Because she's a
Yeah.
Targaryen, but she doesn't have a dragon. And she's a Valerian, but she doesn't know anything about ships. So at least
Oh.
she could have gotten in touch with like one side of her family a little bit more, right? But, and I
Mhm.
think it would be nice to kind of be with where her mom grew up. But I guess that is less of a care for them. But
So here's a hypothetical question for all of you guys. I'll start off with Steve because we haven't heard from Steve in a while.
Yeah,
Steve,
fair.
Steve, do you think Reyna's going to claim a dragon this season?
Dude, I've read the books.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, I think I will say that the show has not been firmly rigid in
A short
what
answer,
happens in the
yes,
book.
but I don't think it's going to be the dragon from the book.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there because I'm not allowed to talk about book spoilers in here.
Uh,
But yeah, Sarah, what do you think? Do you think so?
I haven't read the books, but I've seen people yap about it. I think it is heavily hinted in this episode that Laenor has kicked the bucket because his dragon Sea Smoke, is that the name, was a little
Yeah.
restless. And I guess it would be interesting for her for her to get that dragon. But I don't know. I think it would be also interesting to see a Targaryen that never gets a dragon. But
It
I
would.
think she's gonna get one. I'm sure she's gonna get one. They need another fighter to die in this war, so I guess. Or to
Aw,
not die. I don't know. I I'm pretending like everything's gonna be happy in my head.
Lady
I'm with
Nez, what
you.
do you think? Do you think Reyna's getting a dragon?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say. Yeah, 100%. But I agree with Steve. I think we're of the same mind of where I think she's going with that, or what dragon it would be. I think it's gonna surprise a lot of people. I'm hoping
Yeah.
anyway. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping it goes that way because I would hate for it not to be included. I guess I should say.
This feels like
Yeah.
when those videos try to avoid certain words for YouTube monetization, like everybody's trying to speak around the book spoilers.
Right? Okay. I don't know. But yeah, I do. I think she's going to.
All right. Good to know. All right. So I mean, we already kind of touched on the Corlys and Rhaenys bit. I think we already sort of touched on because they had a little scene together where sort of Rhaenys was bringing up who's going to be the heir and stuff like that, and you know, whether it would be Rhaena or Joffrey and stuff like that. So I think that was an interesting little scene that we got between them. But I sort of want to segue into what I found to be one of the most intriguing parts of the episode, which is Daemon and his arrival at Harrenhal. So, Steve, I'll start again with you. What did you think of Harrenhal?
God, there is absolutely nothing bad I can say about that whole scene or those sequences at all. Like, they were just outstanding start to end. Um, did I think Harrenhal looked a little bit too much like a ruin? Kind of. It's been about 100 and something years since it got burnt down. As there's been a bunch of lords since then. I'm sure they must have done some renovations, but I don't mind it. I'm so glad they went with the haunted house aspect of it as well. The weirwood tree entrance was great, and the lady as well. Alice Reverse, she had the perfect amount of creepiness to her as well.
She's so
Like, it was
mommy.
just outstanding. Yeah.
Sarah, what did you think of the Harrenhal atmosphere?
I I honestly I watched House of the Dragon laughing the entire way because I love the atmosphere, but I could not get over how Damon landed at like the top of the highest tower, and then in all of his armor must have climbed down like 20 flights of stairs with his sword out like he's in a Skyrim dungeon, like he's so ready to fight, and then he slowly like clears each room, attacks some poor guard that's probably like, hey, the venison's just done. You ready to eat? absolutely beats the crap out of him, opens it, and then the guy's just like, "Oh, hey, yeah, we're yours now." Like that entire scene was so funny, and then I was just laughing my ass off the entire time. It's just if it felt so comical to me. I did love the atmosphere. Um, it was so wet. I can't. Did nobody do any repairs in like the past few years? I know it burned down,
Yeah, that
but
was my issue as
by
well.
how much?
I think the thing is that I think we've already always sort of been under the impression that Harrenhal is a castle that was built beyond most houses' means in terms of being able to maintain it. Like this is a
Mhm.
castle that's the biggest in Westeros by a huge amount. And so like no one family was ever going to be able to maintain all of that
Right.
effectively. I
The
think that
mortgage
the
is too high.
Strongs I think the Strongs don't seem to have been doing a good enough job. I think they could definitely be doing more than they were. And we'll get on to Simon Strong, but I think, as it is, I was really impressed with actually how Harrenhal came across. It was really spooky and eerie. I
Mhm.
loved the rain and sort of Damon just sort of sneaking around. I really like the comparison that Steve made to it being like a haunted house. I think it really did feel like you were in like a horror movie sort of thing. So I really did like that aspect of it. Um, yeah, and obviously we'll get on to Alice Rivers, but I think I'll talk about Simon Strong now. So we've got his introduction. He seems like he's going to be around for a little bit in this sort of Harrenhal story that Damon's got on. So what do we think of him?
He's
What are the vibes
amazing.
we're
He's
getting?
so funny.
He is like I
He's
don't
so
know
real.
how they're right, and I feel like I don't know how they're doing it, but the writers have seemed this season to get like imbue a little comedy in there in some of Damon's scenes in particular. Like it was like a little slapstick comedy, just even him and Simon going back and forth, his dry humor, just the delivery. I was laughing a lot of this part too as well. Like she was it was funny. It just played on the whole scene at the table in episode 2 between him and Rhaenys and Rhaenyra, like when she realizes, like I don't know how they're doing it, but it's like so dramatic, these shows, and then this little scene with Damon and someone else, and it has me just cracking up. And Simon was able to get right in there and give as good as he got. I loved him. I can't wait to see more of him.
He felt
And
so
the fact that
human.
yes, and the fact that he hates Larry's and is like, "That's no nephew of mine." I'm like, preach!
I
Like
I
immediately,
love
he was
that.
my favorite.
He was killing me with like, don't you think it's weird that they burned down here? Look around you. Like,
I know.
isn't it a tad bit suspicious? I was like, yes, curious.
Yes, I
Curious.
know. Right? I loved him. It was an awesome introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really enjoyed the banter with Damon. Really enjoyed the sort of I impressed I especially like the end of it where Damon's describing the throne. And he's just like it's a big iron chair with swords in it.
Yeah.
I
That was
found that
killing me. I imagine
Oh, but I'm curious. What did you guys think of him like correcting Simon and being like, "Your Grace"? Like, I don't know. Isn't Your Grace reserved
Mm.
only for the ruling monarch,
yeah, I think
not the
so.
consort? I was like, I that was one part I was completely taken back by. I was like, no, no, Damon, down boy, bad boy, no, no. Like that was
Welcome
crazy to me.
welcoming Amond up to the chat.
Amen.
Nice
One
to
eye.
Amond One
Ooh,
Eye. Just to have some
mm,
more voices up in here.
Hey
that's
everyone, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
yeah.
Okay, great. I'm not a huge Discord user, so I'm definitely going to sound like that person at work who asks, if you can see my screen, or I'll be talking when I'm muted. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Literally, that was me the first 5 minutes, so don't worry about it.
Okay, great. I'm not
It's
the
not
only
an
one.
online thing if there aren't at least 3 technical difficulties. So
Oh, we've had
Yeah.
so many. I miss Loretti so much. But yeah, it's good to have you up here. We've just been talking about, I mean, you've probably been listening to us talking about Damon and Harrenhal, but it's an interesting point that you bring up about the Your Grace thing. I think this is Damon sort of trying to assert himself. I think he's sort of trying to break away from this idea that he's just a consort. I think he sees himself as more than that. He almost sees himself as like co-ruler to Rhaenyra. I think he's the king in his mind to Rhaenyra's queen and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's interesting to sort of see
Probably.
him stepping away from that, and I wonder if he's going to get a bit of a reality check at some point.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting.
I think he's always kind of thought himself somewhat as the heir, right? Because even in the first episode of the first show, right, he's like, I'm the heir of the throne. So I think in his head, he's always like, I'm kind of the more rightful heir, though. I mean, I was here before all of you guys. So he
Right.
probably has
Yeah.
always had that, like, in the back of his head.
Steve, are
He's
you
a
back?
weird character. Like, it's like, I don't know. Like, he's in the books, in the book, and I'm not gonna get into spoilers or anything like that, but his like need to be closer to the throne is very, very clear. In the show, they've made him a bit more nuanced with regards to that. So it's really interesting just watching this whole thing play out, the way he thinks about it as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that in the show with like the
Yeah.
many layers that, they're gonna that I anticipate that he'll show, and I'm really interested in his character arc. Just to see if he'll be reflecting more, after the argument with Rhaenyra, the dream that he had with young Rhaenyra, and I don't know if y'all had gotten into that. I joined a little bit late there, but yeah, definitely keep my eye on him and Aegon so far this season.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the dream aspect comes a bit later on in the episode, but we'll definitely get into that, I think, because that's a really important point to touch on. But yeah, so we'll I think we'll wrap up on the Damon Harrenhal storyline. I think we'll move on to the introduction of another new character now. Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain Hightower. What did we think of him?
Seems a bit fruity.
Ugh. I was just like, ugh, like,
Uh,
like he's a lot. He's a lot. You can tell he was born and raised under like my dad's the hand of the king, my sister's the queen. Like, and Ottawa's the hand through for Jaehaerys too. So I'm sure he's been raised the whole. He's like the epitome of a lordling. That's the feeling I got from seeing him.
Yeah, I
I
can't
agree
believe a
completely.
character
Yeah.
made Kristen look likable for a second.
Oh yeah,
I
right. Like,
Yeah, just for a split second, right?
For like a split second, I was
yeah,
like, Kristen, I
but
can't believe I'm on your
I blinked,
side.
right? But I blinked and it was gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very green, and it just reminds me of Rhaenys in the first episode in the tournament, saying that the nights were as green as
Sweet summer
summer
grass.
grass. Yeah, um, and that's the impression that I get from him, especially.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to his character a lot, though. I have a feeling he's gonna be a really interesting one to watch.
Maybe he and Kristen can have like a really good bromance, and Kristen can maybe get through some of his issues. Yeah, we can hope.
Yeah, right. Hopefully. I feel like I'm going to end up liking him a little more as time goes on, just for that fact that he is like an irritant to Crispy over there. So that will be good. He'll probably, go up in the rankings in my book.
Yeah, this isn't about Gwen, but Kristen, what happened to your hair? What did
Okay,
he do?
okay, that was my question too.
No
I
I
wonder
think
don't
they
Dwayne
did
know.
was so
that.
aggressive. If I saw somebody with that haircut, I'd also be like,
I think they
So,
did that for two reasons. I think one, in terms of like the show, from the show side of it, I think they did it um to age him up. I think because a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, Kristen doesn't age; he looks exactly the same as he did the entire show. So I think that the haircut that
Yeah.
they chose for him is goofy as hell, but it does make him look older. So I think that they did a reasonable job with that. And I think the other reason is more practical. I think it's maybe an in-universe explanation is that he's going off to war and he needs
Yeah.
a hairstyle that works well under a helmet. And maybe his hair was too thick before for the helmet, and
I g-
maybe he needs.
It could be worse. It could be a buzz cut, but
Oh God. Yeah, Kristen, just the military bro with the buzzed hair.
yeah. And then there's Eamon with like the long flowing L'Oreal hair, ready to go to war. He's like, I'm not cutting it for you guys. No.
Oh God. Imagining Aemond with short hair is traumatizing. I don't think I could do that. But oh yeah, okay. So yeah, we were talking about Gwaine. Obviously, I think I found his introduction interesting because it sort of seemed to suggest that now that Alicent has somebody that is a little bit more close to her, there seems to be a wedge being driven firmly between her and Kristen, which, considering what happened in the first two episodes, is quite interesting to see that their relationship seems to be crumbling a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
I think she just also feels like extreme guilt when she looks at Kristen, because she is a little repressed and self-righteous. And even though I support her having her sexual awakening with Kristen, I think she also like associates him a little bit with like what happened to her grandson. The family trees, man. And so even though they did do the devil's tango at the end of last episode, I think that was less because she feels like really close with him and more that she wanted an outlet for her grief. So I think I don't know how she actually feels about him one on one. Like if all of this drama wasn't happening, I don't know if she would still be diddling the night.
Did you just say diddling the night?
Yeah, yeah. You know, you do what you gotta do. I guess he doesn't look that bad. I can't judge you, Allison. You do what you need to do. You go get it, girl.
All right. Um, so we'll move on to I think there's another scene that I might have skipped over, but we were talking about Allison. So let's talk about Allison's scene with Helena. What did you guys think of that scene? Because it was kind of interesting to see that Helena was feeling guilty for being sad in sort of scene for about her son's death. What did you guys think about that?
It Oh, you guys can tell me to shut up if I'm talking too much. But I think last episode was extremely focused on how each one of the Greens grieve is more accurate. But I think this episode it's still continuing that because even though Helena's like I don't want to feel sad anymore, I think she still does, right? She must still feel sad. And what she's choosing to do now is just kind of repress that emotion deep inside of her, which can't be good. From experience, it's not good. And I think when she tells Allison she forgives her, maybe it just reads as that to me, but I think she just knows that's what Allison needs to hear. I don't know if she ever really blamed her to begin with. She might just know that her mother feels deeply guilty about this, right? And that's what her mother needs to hear in order to continue on. But that might be giving a little too much credit to Helena. Helena is still Allison's daughter. I do not think that emotional like intelligence is good in a single one of the Greens. That's like their key feature, I'm not gonna lie. They're also emotionally stunted. It's depressing and I love them for it.
That's so true. It is. I feel like, and it all started with Otto and just shot all the way down. None of them.
Oh yeah.
No, but I feel like I agree where Helena almost knows. I think it's more that the only thing she doesn't have the words to deal with the emotions, but she definitely has all those emotions, and she knew, that Allison. I agree with that she did know that she was after forgiveness. Because how many times did Allison try to start that conversation?
She was
And
like
just kept
Kristen and
on,
like
and
and like the sex with Rhaenyra. She was dying to tell somebody, and nobody would let her say it. Nobody. She tried to go to her dad. And
no,
he's like,
not Otto.
"Don't tell me." And I
He's
support
like,
him.
you've sinned. I don't want to hear it.
Which yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure we can have different takes on why he said that. Like I heard some people say that he forgives her no matter what. He loves her, right? But uh, oh boy, they're
Yeah.
so pathetic. I love them.
They're definitely good to watch.
Yeah.
Enjoyable to watch. They're yeah, they
Eamon
should
and
be.
Steve, do you guys have anything to add to this discussion on this particular scene?
So
If
whenever Helena mentioned that she forgave Allison, my first thought was blood and cheese, right? But
Mhm.
historically, with the comments that Helena has made and how it spiraled or became like a b- bigger event, I feel like it's going to be about something else.
Oh boy. I think that would break my heart
Yeah.
actually.
Oh yeah, I could see that. I could see her like maybe she's having a vision and it's something that hasn't happened yet, or even it's a like, I forgive you for she has a big hand in all of this, in the whole green faction, and pushing them towards the throne, because I think it's very obvious that Helena doesn't really want anything to do with the throne, even to the point of saying, for what if Jaehaerys doesn't want to be king, like all of those things, it could be sorry for that too, like for putting us in this position to begin with,
Right. And I think
but that's a good
Helena
point.
has suffered a lot under Allison, even if it's not like directly intentionally. Like I don't think Allison like is trying to be abusive, but Allison I don't think has ever really understood Helena's needs, right? And Helena might in a way blame Allison for being married to Aegon, because I
Mhm.
there's no way in hell that Helena would have chosen that on her own accord, right? It's hard. I don't
Um,
think they say if it was really Allison's ideas or like Otto's idea to get them married for like legitimacy, but Helena could blame her for like a lot of different things. So she could be forgetting
yeah, definitely.
a lot.
All right. I think we'll move on to a different scene now. So I think the scene I want to talk about next is Aegon he's getting dressed. He's getting ready to go to war. To meet up with Kristen, actually, who's just setting out now. Uh, and he's with his little buddies, and getting put in his armor. And Laris shows up, and Laris is like, "Oh, we probably shouldn't let Aegon go to war because he's going to get torn apart by the enemy, and that's not going to be good for morale." So, what do you guys think of Laris's sort of manipulation tactics and how they're affecting Aegon?
I think he knows
Well,
exactly what to say. He's silver tongue.
Larry's just Larrying all over the place then, right? Like he can put an idea in his head and then also undermine that idea at the same time. It's insane. Like he's putting it out there that like that's what the council wants, like, oh yeah, you want to go out there, well that's right, what they want too, if you die, and like he can simultaneously pull them away from someone else and under his wing in just his mannerisms and what he says and how he presents it, and when he chooses to talk to, when he does, he blows my mind, that dude scares the ever loving crap out of me. He's got to be the biggest villain or the scariest thing in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like everywhere, like he scares me more than the Night King and all that mess. Like he's one to watch.
Yeah, he seems to be able to read all of the greens much better than the greens can read themselves. And I think it's not really related to him. I think I love how the armor, Aegon the Conqueror's armor, looks way too big and ill-fitting on Aemon. It makes him look like a little kid. And I think that works great because he doesn't fit the armor because he's nothing like Aegon the Conqueror, right? He probably thinks he is a little bit, but he doesn't. He's trying to wear armor that's too big for him, and I think he kind of looks cute in that. I'm not an Aegon supporter, but he
Right.
can head pat him.
But it's like just another symbolism of maybe he's not fit for the role, right?
Right. And it's just like they keep showering him in things that make him look more like, the rightful king. But him, like, on the inside, especially since last season, he got chewed out by his grandpa, right? So now it kind of feels like he's also trying to, like, surround himself in things that make him feel like, maybe I am the
Yeah.
rightful king. I mean, I have Aegon's armor, so, like, who can tell me otherwise? Like, especially in the council, it's shown that he feels a little insecure, and he wants to prove himself to be, like, a good fighter. He probably feels in some way a little, I'm going to use the word emasculated, but I don't think that's the word I'm looking for, by Aemon, right? He kind of feels like, because Aemon's a better sword fighter and he does study. So he kind of maybe feels like he also needs to prove himself.
Right.
All of these men always feel like they need to prove themselves. Like, have you tried
Right.
just being a
Yeah.
better person?
Steve, what
No,
do you
no,
think
can't
of
do that.
what do you think of the
Oh
scene?
yeah, I actually wanted to bring up whether anybody noticed that Larys get a little emotional when Aegon made him part of the small council.
Right. Well, I
He
saw
showed
that it
emotion?
almost. I didn't see emotion. I read it more like it was like yes, like that real subtle, like finally, like he got what he wanted. I feel like it was almost a goal and he succeeded. That's the feeling I got. But I
Mm,
could see that is definitely an emotional thing, right? When you finally
yeah,
achieve this
because like if
devious
you think
plan.
about it, he's been around the small council and the court life since Rhaenyra and Alicent were kids.
Oh
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's
yeah,
right. He sure
and
has been.
now he's finally a part of the small council, and I don't know. I at the very least thought the actor pulled off a bit of a like, oh my God, I actually got this. Like, like, yeah, thank you so much, Your Grace.
I don't know if
Mm.
Laris would fully want to be part of the council, like all of him, because I think a part of him does especially thrive in not being in the spotlight and being
But
like
that's
in the
that's the best
shadows.
part of being Master of Whisperers, right? Like
Right. Yeah,
he
I guess
doesn't
you
have
still
to be in the
are.
council all the time.
Yeah, you can just
Yeah,
kind of pop
it's
and be
like your
like, "Hey,
job to do
girls."
that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost it's like a badge to do all the nefarious things he's was doing anyway. Because
Keep doing what
ultimately he
he's
was
doing.
acting as the but he was being the king. What was he before? The king's justice, or what do you call them?
The
The ones
the
that
the master torture is basically what he was. I think it was something else.
something, yeah,
Confessional,
that dole out the
confessioner?
punish
Is that the word?
The royal
Yeah, I
confessor,
think
confessor, I
so,
think.
yeah.
It was yeah.
confessor. There you go. That's it. Yeah. Wow.
That makes it sound so nice.
It does.
It's like when the US calls it's interrogation techniques, and you're like, right, right.
Eamon, do you have anything to add on this scene?
So I don't really have, I guess, like um a concrete opinion about this. So it's more about asking what y'all think about Laris's posture whenever he's around Aegon, whenever he's hunched over, versus when he's alone with Alicent and he's standing tall.
I never noticed that.
I haven't either. But
You have a
girl,
good
you bet
eye.
I'm gonna be going back and watching that. No, I hadn't, but I'm picturing
I
him
think
standing outside of Allison's door, and he was standing very upright right then when he's, asking where she was. Where were you? I came to your door, and he was standing very upright. Like, that's interesting. I love that.
Yeah, I think
and
I
that
think it's
plays even
quite
more.
I think it's
and
quite similar to if you guys are all Game of Thrones fans, then you might remember in the early
so do
seasons when we saw Pycelle. I think,
Mm,
Maester Pycelle, he would often pretend to be sort of like this doddering old fool who couldn't really move very well and stuff like that. But then we saw a sort of scene of him basically like exercising, which was a really
Oh
weirdly done
yeah.
scene. But it just sort of showed that there was more to him than met the eye. And I think with Laris, I mean, there's an obvious physical disability there, but I think he's more on top of it than people know. And I think it's a very symbolic sort of exertion of power by Laris because he knows that he can't sort of dominate the king. He's not that sort of, advisor. He's not like an Otto Hightower. He's not a Tywin Lannister who can
Mhm.
dominate the king. But he knows that he has power over Alicent. And I think that's why he sort of stands tall with her versus maybe, oh, look at me, I'm this little frail little man
I'm
to
just a
Aegon
guy.
and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think um, yeah, I think it's interesting to sort of see the juxtaposition there. It's good that you pointed that out, actually. So yeah, very, very, very observant. Um, but yeah, so I think the meat and bones of that scene is that Aegon was sort of deciding whether or not to fly to war to meet Kristen, and I think Laris sort of persuaded him against going. So what does Aegon do? Well, he goes and gets drunk, which is a very Aegon thing to do. And this is where we meet another new character. Well, we sort of saw him a bit in episode 2, after Blood and Cheese, after the rat catchers were hanged. We saw him a little bit there, if you remember, but he's properly introduced this episode. I'm talking about Ulf. His full name is
Yeah.
Ulf the White. And he's a bit of a player. He's a bit of a storyteller. And what do we think of his introduction properly this episode?
It kind of reminded me of when they talked about Dayron and they had to sneak in like a little bit of extra exposition, because otherwise people would just be like, who's Dayron? Because he was talking a lot about like what dragon seeds kind of are, and I was like, the best way to not get killed for being a Targaryen bastard is to maybe not talk about it loudly in a bar with 1,000 people beside you. Uh, but I don't really
Like,
know
where
about him
else do
because
you
I'm not
talk
a book
about these
reader.
things?
So
I was
Steve,
like,
what did you think of it?
Sorry?
I was gonna say, what did you think
Oh
of
yeah, I
Ulf?
loved it. I loved everything that they're doing. All of the small folk characters. Like I'm so far really enjoying the different. It's just a different plus it's just a different part of seeing a different part of King's Landing as well. I really enjoy everything like that. And yeah, I think it'll be easier to talk more about Ulf as the episodes go by.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we'll sort of transition now into the rest of that scene, obviously, because it's not just about Ulf. Aegon shows up in the tavern, and he's got a mission, which is to get his get his
Get it away. I need him to
get a
stop using
squire
that phrase. It's so bad. It's so bad.
But
get a
it's so
squire's
Aegon too.
whistle wet. But yeah, very gross. But anyway, so he's gonna get one of his squires laid, and so he takes him there, and we see a succession of nudity, very strong nudity that I don't really want to touch
Well,
on very much,
actually,
but
right before, there is one thing that I thought was interesting, that I missed the first time I watched it, was that one of the maids in the tavern is actually that girl that he assaulted back in season
Mhm.
1. And
Diana.
it
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like they're trying to remind you, like, this is who he is, right? Don't forget about what he did, and like the effects that the royals. It's once again like that theme of the effects that royals have on like the small folk without even thinking about it. Because when she serves Aegon, does he give her a second look? Not at all.
Mm-mm.
And he completely changed her life. Now she's working in this place where she's harassed by men all day. And she did get harassed in the castle, don't get me wrong, but it seems much less safer here for her, right? And he doesn't even have a second thought about it, like, oh, Aegon, oh buddy.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
really?
I mean, I think it's interesting because we do get a bit more of a human side of Aegon this season, but then they do just remind us again that
Right.
he's not the greatest of people. Very far from it. In fact, he's still very
Don't forget
much a
about
bad.
this. Don't.
He's still very much a bad person who's done bad things. And I think it's important to sort of like keep that present there. But yeah, very interesting to see if she shows up in future episodes or not, Diana.
Hmm.
But it's interesting that she's sort of working in that sort of vicinity. So she's still quite close to Aegon. She hasn't left King's Landing or anything like that. She's still very much around. Um, but yeah, like I do want to talk about sort of like Aegon in terms of like what he finds when
Oh.
he's dragging
Oh.
his squire with him, and they come across Aemond, a naked Aemond, which is a very interesting scene to say the
Yeah.
least.
I was
But
so sad.
Yeah, I'm
So
a I'm
sad.
an Aemon stan, unfortunately. I'm just, I'm one of those girls, and I felt really bad. It was like so many emotions because I was already in shock from the first curtain and what was behind it. I was already like, "Oh my god." And when he was walking towards it and talking, I was like, "Oh no. I know what's coming up." And then like the secondhand embarrassment was like really filling me.
Oh.
I was cringing so bad, and I felt so bad for him, and it almost felt like Aegon was like his kind of, because he must have known that Blood and Cheese was going for Aemond and not really his son. Maybe he didn't, but maybe that thought came through his head, right? It's a son for his son. His son had nothing to do with it. Aemon did, right? So I felt like maybe he was putting out his kind of rage towards his son on his brother because it is so dumb
Mhm.
to be messing with literally the most powerful dragon rider. Um,
Yeah.
and I think in Aemon's head, because in the last brothel scene from the last episode, he was talking to her about how they bullied him, and it's still clearly like a wound inside of his heart, right? And I think when
God.
Aegon did it again, it kind of reactivated that in his mind. He's like, it's just like when I was a kid,
Mhm.
right? Even though everything has changed, even though I have made myself better, I'm still bullied by this fucking kid. Like, oh my god. Oh my god. And he just
Wow.
like grabs whatever dignity he has and really shows the camera that dignity and marches out. I must ask, this has been
Like a
bothering me
boss.
so much. Where are his
Mhm.
clothes? Like just in general, where are they?
I
Because
know. Did
he
he
walks
walk all the
out
way back to
without
the
any
Red Keep
clothes.
butt naked?
Right. So did he have to like awkwardly like be like, oh wait, I know I just left, but let me just grab that? Or did he like did they get undressed at like the front door? Like how did you do you, bud? You do you.
I thought it was such a boss move for him to walk like that, because they did. It was just the same old shit, but an adult Aegon. Um, I feel like you hit on that it really did. I hope it hit home for him that even then, even years ago when he was being bullied, like Aegon was the instigator of that. Even when it was Jason Luke with him, he was the oldest, and I hope there are repercussions for that type of behavior and how he burnt Eamon like that in front of everybody. I was so sad for him, and yeah, that wasn't okay.
Right. And his
Steve, what
like
did you
place
think?
of safety too. That's where he feels safe.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know,
where
that's
he
his
can be
whole.
vulnerable. And Aemon understands the role of defending family in public, but Aegon doesn't. And I know like Allison had really harped that, or um, she emphasized that whenever she caught young Aegon masturbating.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
so
yes.
it's like, hey, remember that one scene? Okay.
Yeah.
We all do.
And
We
like,
all do.
And Aemon got the memo right away, like from the time he was a kid. But Aegon, as
If
hello, can y'all hear me?
we you cut out for a little
Yeah,
bit, but now we can hear
Oh,
you again.
we're
dang,
back.
sorry. Yeah, okay. So there was someone here who mentioned that, like Aegon is instigating and he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aegon will support seemingly because he did support his brother in like the little dinner time fight in episode 8 last season. He will support his brother if there is like a worse evil that he views, like the blacks, like in the council. He's like, we have my brother, right? He'll support his brother in that way, right? But the second that he feels like he can punch down to him, he will. Like, oh boy.
Oh,
Oh yeah, that's
I
a good
have a
point.
question. It kind of plays off this scene, but isn't correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Aemond the heir to the Iron Throne right now? Like, how does that work? Because shouldn't he be the heir, or are the Greens going to go against and have Jaehaera named as the heir? Because that wouldn't work since they're screaming about Rhaenyra can't be queen.
Right.
So I'm wondering about that now too. Did he just completely offend his heir, who will take his place, who also has the badass dragon?
Right.
The biggest weapon. Like, I don't know that that was very smart.
Aegon probably
Yeah.
he probably hasn't even thought about it, to be honest. And I think he truly thinks that his brother is like 100% loyal to him no matter what, because he says so in like the first episode. He's like, also stop comparing your brother to a dog, my guy. That is such a weird behavior. He's like, my brother is as loyal as a hound. Like, okay. As if you aren't right
You
now
said
in
a
a fight
dragon.
battling your family. Like, I don't know if you wanna bet on that, buddy, but
I think that's interesting point though. Is that Aegon seems kind of obsessed with punching down, as you said, with Aemond, but Aemond is the heir. I think the show, this is different in the books, but I'm not going to get into why it's different. But the show has made Aemond become the heir pretty much de facto, seeing as Jaehaerys is now dead and stuff like that. So
Uh,
I think Aegon is not really taking this very seriously, and I think he might come to regret that. But one of the questions I sort of came to mind was going forward, especially since we're on the cusp of war now, specifically a dragon fighting war. How do we think Aemond is gonna? What's his mindset gonna be going into that? Because he's been sort of advocating for his brother this whole time, and his brother really isn't giving him much right now in the way of respect. Are we gonna see a bit of retaliation from Aemond? Are we gonna see a little bit of maybe disobeying orders, or maybe even betrayal from Aemond?
I kind of hope so. Like logically, I do like him the idea that he's like loyal to his brother, but like a part of me is like kick that guy, punch him, destroy him because honestly, Aegon needs it. He needs to be slapped up the head a little bit and taught a lesson because he that kid.
it seems like they've kind of set it up, right, for
Right.
him to do something by making him his heir,
Right.
and having, yeah.
I also think Aemond is like definitely like an inner boiler, right? Like he might not scream at Aegon at any point, but he's still angry and he's just kind of like adding it to the anger stockpile he has growing. If he's gonna take that out on his brother or like the
Yeah.
world, I guess we'll find out. It's
Well,
really
look,
good when powerful men get really, really angry. Sure, nothing bad's gonna happen from that. Especially
well,
because
last
we've
time
seen scenes
yeah,
where the
he
small
lost.
folk
He
was
killed
like,
another dragon when he lost his
right,
temper last time. He killed Eric's and Luke, and he said that I lost my temper. Like, whoa,
right.
dragons
And
and
it'll be
people die when you get upset.
right, and it'll be interesting to see if he kind of takes that as like either a learning chance and be like, well, I know what happened last time I learned that I lost my temper, or if he's gonna be like, well, I already lost my temper once. Why not do it again? Like well, so
Well, so Aemond the turtle. What do you think of Aemond the character as sort of motivations now? How do you think he's gonna? Do you want to jump in on this?
I don't really have a lot of strong opinions right now because I'm kind of conflicted. Because I mean, we all know that he's an insecure boy, even before the brothel scene.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was especially obvious after he killed Luke. Um, I think with all of the taunts, there is going to be a point when he's not going to obey Aegon. Aegon just seems so confident about having Aemon as his loyal hound, right? So I do think that it's coming and that they've been building up to it. So I do think that Aemon is going to reach a breaking point. Um, and with the Targaryen, having fire in his blood, along with the temper, it's only going to be a matter of time.
Right.
I I'm
Absolutely.
just I'm just interested to see how his insecurity is going to fuel his false confidence and drive him to that point. So it's just wait and see. Really excited for his arc as well. Obviously, I'm biased.
Right, especially because he is kind of like a mirror image of Damon, right? And Damon has already kind of gone against Rhaenyra's wishes with the whole blood and cheese thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had Aemon do similar things with
Mhm.
with other
Yeah,
situations.
yeah, I like how they
Well,
mirrored Damon and Aemon, with the horrors as well, which is showing them being very vulnerable. So I just like how they're showing that they're closer to, or they're not quite the same person, but they're not total opposites either. And I like how the show's
No,
portraying that.
Yeah, they're kind of men led by insecurity. And I know a lot of
yeah,
people hate that. I'm in the chats. A lot of people dislike it, but I personally love that they're kind of doing that with Eamon and Damon because even though I think people want them to be like evil, but I think there is plenty of time, right? I think that right now we're seeing what is still good inside of them, right? And that soon they're gonna dive off that cliff head first.
And I'm here for the chaos.
Yeah. Me
So
too.
let's segue actually now. Let's segue into talking about Damon because I think this is around the time where we pick up back with Damon. Obviously he's still in Harrenhal, and he's having trouble sleeping. There's a leak in his room. The rain sort of seeping in, so he starts having these interesting visions, and one of them in particular I think is going to stand out to a lot of people because it sees the return of one young Rhaenyra. So that's quite interesting to see her coming back, especially in the form of Damon's dreams, and also what she's doing. Because she, as if you can remember, is actually sewing Jaehaerys's head back on,
Poor
and we can see
baby.
Damon. We can see Damon looking really upset at that. So, May, is Damon feeling remorse? Is he feeling regret? Who wants to jump in on that?
I I would say so. I think maybe the writers want to give Damon some redeeming scenes because he is quite terrible overall. And in the same way that they try to make Aemon seem a little bit more like he feels guilt for what he did to Lucerys, I think it is interesting how they're also making Damon feel that same guilt. And I don't know if that guilt is towards young Rhaenyra, maybe for like kind of setting this all in motion for taking her to that brothel when she was like what 15, because he did kind of set that all up when trying to kind of give Viserys a reason to marry her to him, I think, young. Because I think that was his goal all the way back in like episode 3, season 1, or something like that, right? Like he ended up putting a lot of this in motion. Because if that didn't happen, Viserys wouldn't have felt the need to like instant marry Rhaenyra off, right? Like a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened to a certain extent.
Lady Miz, what do you think?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was typing away and was like not even paying attention. I apologize. So we're talking about Damon and his dreaming, or where am I?
Yeah, like,
Right?
do you
Right.
think that Damon feels guilty about the death of Jaehaerys?
I don't think he was until he almost until it was brought to his attention. He's almost like a dog. Like they almost like you almost have to like rub their nose in it almost for them to see they did wrong. And I think Damon's very similar that way. I think the Rhaenyra did the proverbial rub his nose in it there back at Dragonstone. And then I also think this dream or sequence that he's going through is you're seeing that come into play in his thoughts. Like I think what Rhaenyra said is really starting to take root in him. So I think he's starting to. And I think that's the dream sequence is kind of just showing us maybe that Damon, it has to kind of be hit him upside the head with it until he actually sees that teenage young Rhaenyra cleaning up his messes, telling him that this is what she's been doing. To see that, does he finally? It's like it's sinking in. So I think we might see that play out more later in the season, some of that guilt. But ultimately, I don't think Damon as a person is never gonna feel that guilty. He's gonna be like, oh well, maybe I shouldn't have. Yeah, maybe you're right. But he's not going to. I don't think it's ever gonna affect him in a negative manner.
Yeah,
In
I feel
his
like
psyche or anything.
the way he deals
Till-
with guilt was like, anyways. Maybe we're
yeah,
trying to
he's
go
like
more
that.
into that, but he's like, I just want to think about it.
Yeah,
Does
right.
anyone have any theories as to why the Rhaenyra that he saw in the dream was young Rhaenyra and not current Rhaenyra?
I think he
I
loved her
I
more.
think
I think that's
Or
I
why
think
she's always idolized in his heart. Because that's the original her that he grew up. And when she was younger, she didn't oppose him really in any way, right? Like older Rhaenyra is a little bit more like self independent is the word I'm going to use.
she's a
Once again, not the
woman.
right word, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
she's willing to like kind of be like, no, I didn't like what you did there. Whereas young Rhaenyra, like she accepted the little gifts that he brought her. She always like looked at him like, hey,
Yeah, young Rhaenyra needed him. Young Rhaenyra looked up to him. Young Rhaenyra, that was also back when he was, maybe still the heir. He was closer to the throne. It was before all this mess. Remember, because he wanted to marry Rhaenyra at that age. Remember, he wanted to take her to wife then. So I
Ew.
think that's why that Rhaenyra is gonna have more effect on him in that moment. I think that's why it went that route.
Yeah, it's more impactful. And now I feel like, with her being older, she sees him more as a political headache.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are my political headache. Sorry, I just had to bring that. I just had to say that.
I love that line. I just love how funny and like how real young Rhaenyra and Viserys' relationship was.
I'm telling you guys, House of the Dragon is a comedy. I'm laughing
I,
through
And
every single one. I do truly love it. Maybe I
I,
just take nothing seriously, but it's so funny.
I miss Viserys. I really do. I think he was a great part of season 1, and I really do miss him.
Me too. I'm not.
But
So just quick little thing. I'm not sure if anybody's seen Hot Fuzz, which is a comedy,
yes,
but he's in that and he's just and like
oh,
the actor who plays Otto and his comedic roles, just great. I just wanted to put that out there.
yeah. Um. So I think we're still talking about Harrenhal though, because I wanted to sort of talk about the ending of that scene. So, what I will say is that Sarah, I think you said you haven't read the book.
The books, but I've talked to people, like I've talked in like almost all the channels here, and like
Yeah.
I don't mind spoilers. They make me feel less anxious when I watch TV shows. So
Yeah, I'm not really supposed to talk about book spoilers, but I think if you probably, if you've been in and around a House of the Dragon server, you might have heard the name Alice Rivers crop up.
I'm on
Um
Tumblr, so yeah.
yeah, so that was who we were introduced to at the end of that sequence, and she's interesting. So obviously we saw her a little bit at the dinner table coming in, but we really got to see her in that sort of dark courtyard bit at the end where Damon's sort of emerging from his dream, and he sees her and she says, "You will die in this place." So, what do we think she means by that? It's pretty black and white, but if you're not a book, like if you put on your non-book reader hat for a moment, what do you think she's foreshadowing there?
He dies.
I
Sorry, that's like the base
mean,
understanding.
dying, like dying. I don't want to be the one to say it, but yeah, we think he's dying. Even not reading the books, I would have had that. I would have assumed her to be like, clearly he's gonna die. This could have been a movie or something, and I would have been like, oh yeah, she's like pegged as the witch, Like I would
Yeah.
trust that. Whether, like, I believe her. I guess.
I'm a
But do
simple
we?
woman. I was
Do
too
we
distracted by how hot she was.
but do we think that this is? Because it's a dream, right? So I think my angle with that question was more how reliable
Oh,
is Alice Rivers? Like
I
how
I didn't read
I
that
she's
part as
thought
her
manipulated
that
being part of
Damon.
the dream. I thought that was
I
reality.
didn't either. I didn't either. I'm of that thinking. I thought that that scene where they're then in the Godswood, that was real. I wasn't viewing that as a dream.
It's quite
So,
hard to tell, because it doesn't
well, yeah,
really
I didn't.
feel like there was a defined cut between dream and real. Damon just kind of
Yeah.
ended up in the courtyard. And so in my opinion,
Oh,
I think
okay.
I think what
It,
what we're what we're seeing here is that whatever is happening has something to do with something that Alice Rivers is doing to Damon. I think she is influencing him, and I'm really interested to see where that all goes. Like how being in Harrenhal, which is inherently a very spooky place, like even without Alice Rivers, that's just a really famously scary place to be. Very
Our own little
haunted.
spirit
Ev-
Halloween.
Every house that's ever owned Harrenhal has died out at this
Mhm.
point. So, I think it's a cursed place. And now we've got this woods witch here who's she's cooking up something. So I think it's interesting to think about sort of what Damon is going to have to deal with while he's in Harrenhal. Really, I think he might have to come face to face with some of his own demons, not just blood and cheese, but maybe even some things that have come before. What sort of
Yeah.
Oh
questions do
yeah.
you think that are going to be raised
I do
to
believe that
Damon?
that is like what you're supposed to, the meaning that you're supposed to get from that. But I love the idea that Damon is just so on edge by this like creepy ass, rainy ass place that he's just like, he's dreaming off his mind, and he sees like the scariest woman he's ever seen in a while. He's like, her vibes are weird, and his brain was like putting that all in, even if she wasn't doing anything. But I think logically she's doing her magic.
Yeah.
His anxiety is getting to him. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
interested to see how that plays out too. Like, it seems like everybody who goes there is cursed, right? Like, kind of like you said, that even all the houses, that have taken over there as well seem to go extinct, all kinds of crazy stuff. So I almost feel like, does this mean Damon's like cursed going forward? And what does that mean for other people that go there in the future? Because, right, aren't both parties trying to take Harrenhal to assemble all of their armies? So I'm wondering, does that mean some of the green people are going to show up at Harrenhal? And I wonder if they're going to have dreams. I'm just so interested to see where that goes, because I feel like that could play a part on anybody who goes there, right? If Al
Right.
or comes in contact with Alice Rivers, if she's the one that's behind all that and like putting the visions in his head or whatever that is, entering his dreams. I'm interested to see her do it with more people
Right, and
and
this is
curse
the place it all
people.
started, because this is where like that decision that Viserys would be king happened like all those years ago. It's
Oh
we're
yeah, like
back in the
did
pit.
oh my God, did their whole reign get cursed because it was there in Harrenhal? It makes you wonder. Is that where it started?
I think
Quite
Like this.
possible.
Viserys had a very peaceful reign though. He just his setup for the
Well, I
next
don't know.
one.
Like she's
Had
pregnant,
it.
his wife's pregnant in that shot, and she loses the baby, right? And then
Yeah.
she ends up dying, and really him personally, like his household seemed to be not doing that great. So I mean, and
Not
this
to
it was his
mention,
reign that led to this. So
like Viserys's reign itself was largely peaceful, but you're right. I mean, I
Mhm.
think Viserys as a person was definitely, I mean, you could make an argument that he was definitely cursed because,
First, yeah,
like you
look at
said,
Yeah.
him.
like all of his heirs died, his wife died, he got this horrible disease that eventually killed him. And
Oh my
so
god.
yeah, like I mean, I feel like that those are all symptoms of a curse.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So
Sure, we all felt similar when we were watching last season, and you'd like click on a new episode, and you would look at him, and you'd be like, "You're still alive? How? I thought you would have died at the end of last episode." And he just kept living. I was like, "He's still alive. It's been like 14 years, and he just keeps rotting away. What part of him is working?"
So
um
I do actually wonder if Master Orwell was part of that.
Yeah, there is like there is
Maester,
like a
the
sorry.
theory
Maester
that
Yeah.
conspiracy, the
yeah.
Maester conspiracy theory. Yeah, that's I mean, that's a definitely a good point. I mean, I think it was even probably before Orwell because if you remember, there was a young Maester who suggested to try a new technique with Viserys, but Melos, the old Maester, was like, "No, let's keep doing the leeches." And stuff like that because he likes the leeches. But yeah, I think in that is probably the decision that killed Viserys, to be honest, because I
Well,
think
doesn't that
he
guy
might have
go
benefited.
after one of the time skips? And then you do get the young one that wanted to try something new, but then he did still live for a lot longer. So maybe he did help him a little bit. I don't know. Rest in peace, Viserys. You would have loved antibacterials. You would have loved it. Um,
Mhm.
because I don't. Maybe without the new technique, he would have died even sooner.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I think I don't think they did use the new technique, to be honest. I think that they um they were trying to, but it was refused. So I mean, we'll never know, obviously, but he did survive quite a lot longer than most people thought he would, so we'll give him that. But anyway, so let's move on because I think we've only got 2 scenes left, and I realize this has been like a 2 hour long thing. I don't know how long these are usually meant to last for. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer if you're busy, you got your lives to get to or something. But we've got 2 more scenes to go, and they're quite big ones. So we'll start off with the smaller of the two, which is Kristen Cole. He's on the march. He's out in the field, and what do they come across? But they come across a dragon, Bela's dragon. Bela is on patrol. She's flying around, and she sees Cole and Gwaine and a few of the other knights down on the field, and she decides to give chase. So, what did we think of this scene? Was everybody yelling Dracarys?
Kind of. I was like, I know she saw like a flash of light, but I was like, girl, your eyesight is crazy. Absolutely wild eyesight. I wonder if there's
Yeah.
gonna be ramifications for them seeing her on patrol, because I think a part of Rhaenyra told her to fly high so people wouldn't be able to see her, right? But now
Yeah.
now she's been spotted. I don't know if he can really send that information back. They don't really like a cell phone, but they know about
He
her
can send
now.
a raven. He can send
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
raven and just
Quick,
say
Bela,
we.
kill the
I
raven.
mean, would he know that it was Bela though? I don't know if he would know that it was Bela on Moondancer. I don't
Yeah,
know if
but
he
he
was looking.
probably would know that it wasn't one of their dragons, I would assume. Maybe he thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like how they showcase the bond between the rider and the dragon because Moondancer did alert her to some sort of movement on the ground.
Yeah.
If y'all caught that.
I did not. I just thought she had
I
crazy
didn't
vision.
either. Girl, I need to watch with you. Like you be catching some nuances, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm going back to watch that episode right after this because that's
Yeah,
an
I mean,
amazing catch.
I just love catching small things like that.
Me and my friends are too busy just screaming and laughing the entire time.
Mm.
So what did you think of
And
like the decision? Because she didn't burn them. She didn't burn the forest. She flew above it and then left. Why do you think she chose not to pursue it further?
I'm
I feel
hoping.
like she's her father's daughter, but with more rationale. That's my impression.
Yeah.
I think a lot of like Team Black's like kind of, I'm gonna say envoys, but the people that they send out are there. She's not really trying to add fuel to the fire, I think, to a certain extent. Like she knows she's there to keep an eye on things, but I don't know if she thinks she's there to like, start causing fires that could be like a bigger thing, right? Because if you're burning down a forest, there probably be a lot of repercussions to that to a certain extent, right? If people live in that forest, you're killing civilians, or I don't know how big of an area that was, but fires can get out of control. She might be keeping that like in the back of her mind, like I'm not trying to do that much.
Yeah. I think it's also that maybe there was a bit of doubt in her mind over whether Rhaenyra would want that. I think. I mean, it may be. I think Bela does have a certain level of restraint. It's kind of balanced with a bit of aggression as well. Like she's not totally innocent. Like you could tell that there was an instinct in her that she wanted to probably fuck those guys up. But I think as it was, she was also thinking with her head rather than her heart in that moment. So it's sort of interesting to sort of see that balance there. And then she comes back and she sort of reports it to Rhaenyra, and there's a little bit of an edge to how she says, "Oh well, you said not to engage, so I didn't."
Right, and
So
she's just like her
exactly.
grandmother, because her grandmother also didn't engage when given the chance to cause some fires to the enemy team. So maybe Rhaenys the driftmark time of Rhaenys really kicked in.
I think Bela does really look up to Rhaenys. She really does see her as sort of a surrogate mother figure now that Lena is gone. I think she does see Rhaenys as that now, definitely more than Rhaenyra, obviously, because Rhaenyra wasn't really there. She was on Driftmark. Bela was. So I think Rhaenys was Bela's mom, really, for a lot of her life. And she probably looks up to Rhaenys because Rhaenys is quite brave. She's obviously a dragon rider. she's smart and stuff like that. And so I think she's a lot of things that Bela wants to be and sort of see in herself as well. So I think in that moment, Bela probably thought, "What would Rhaenys do?" And Rhaenys probably wouldn't torch the entire forest. It would just be like a reconnaissance thing. So she'd come back and say, "Look, Cole was here and here. Let's do something about it." But yeah, um, that's an interesting scene, and so I think we'll just sort of flow nicely, just to avoid going over time. We'll flow nicely into this final scene, which is everybody's favorite, um, which
Right.
is Rhaenyra. Sort of well, she's talking to Mizaria, who's now officially sort of her little mistress of whispers type of person. And so Mizaria is tasked with finding a way for Rhaenyra to get into King's Landing because she's read the letter from Alicent and she wants to talk to Alicent face to face. So, I mean, this scene is very contentious for a lot of people. So, I'm gonna start with Amond. What did you think of this scene, just generally?
I mean, this scene did offer some comic relief in the beginning of it, after Rhaenyra was talking to Allison in the beginning. But really, the biggest takeaway for me was that I feel like it's really going to fuel a change in their arc. I don't believe that Rhaenyra is going to be hesitating really much anymore. And I do believe that there's some relief that she now knows that her father did not change his mind, despite what Allison said multiple times earlier in the scene. And whenever Allison mentioned that, that it was too late, I don't think it was about her refusing to act. I think it was the fact that she already lost control and that movement already started. And she wouldn't be able to pull back even if she wanted to.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm.
I agree. I think it was a good scene. I've seen so much hate over that last scene online, but I think it was a really good scene. I think it laid a lot of groundwork for like the second half of the season and especially the, episode 4 with the title I Could Dance with Dragons. I can only imagine what we're walking into. So I think they
Oh
both
boy.
sides kind of needed this episode or that little scene to anchor why they were where they are at that moment and what stance they're taking going forward. I thought it was done really good. I thought the acting was top notch because I definitely wanted to punch out Alicent for a second there because I'm like, no, but no. The way they played it on their face when Rhaenyra realizes it hit home with me so hard because I was like, you could see the devastation on her face when she thought for a second that maybe Viserys did change his mind. I was devastated by that. You could see it all over her face. But then with the confirmation just as quick, I think it was beautifully acted. Um, I mean, I thought it made sense for the characters to try one last time. I don't think it was anything out of character, and also I think there's so many book purists out there saying that never happened, but no, we don't even know what happened. Like something like that, is that going to be reported by the victors? Are they going to report, so I don't see why it couldn't have happened. I don't see why I think it was beautifully placed, beautifully acted, and it was what we needed to kick off where we're going next in the series, I would say.
Steve is back.
He is, and I'm inviting him
You.
up, but I have a question for Sarah.
Yeah,
I
that's
have a
me.
question for you.
Hi.
Um, yes, and so my question for you is, what do you think Rhaenyra would have
Hey
done
guys,
if?
sorry, my call ended quick, so yeah.
Yeah, no worries, Steve. But yeah, Sarah, what do you think Rhaenyra would have done if Alicent hadn't finished saying the reason why Viserys said, if she hadn't said the prince that was promised and just had left it off at, um, Viserys said Aegon, and that's it. What would Rhaenyra have done? Because you saw that her face kind of changed a little bit, and
Oh,
she seemed a bit sad. She seemed a bit doubtful, even.
I
What do you
think it
think
would
she
have
would
like
have done?
added to it, but I also think that they're both a little too far in to completely turn around back. Overall, I like the scene. I do like what happened in the scene. I do agree with some of the critiques that people have, but I think it was worth it. I just wanted them to kiss. I'm gonna be honest. They were so pretty together. And I love the face Allison's face when she remembered that she named her son after somebody. Um, I I feel like Rhaenyra would. She does want to honor her dad's wishes, right? She clearly had a very core, like close relationship with him. But genuinely, I can't imagine that she would completely step down now that she's lost the son. There's already blood spilled on this, like on this fight. Um, yeah, it's.
I
What do you
actually
think?
disagree.
You
I
think she
actually
could stop
disagree.
it?
I think that Rhaenyra in that moment, I think if Alicent hadn't kept talking and had just said he said Aegon and stuff like that, especially considering that Alicent had just said that she doesn't like tell lies and stuff like that, you could tell that Rhaenyra was believing what Alicent was telling her.
That's true.
Yeah.
They've known each other for long enough to where Rhaenyra would know whether Alicent was lying to her or not. Um, but I think, I actually don't think that Rhaenyra. I mean, it might have been out of her control at that point, but I think
Mm-hmm.
she would have taken a very different approach if the conversation had just ended there. I think she was rocked by that in that brief moment. Obviously, she found out the truth like 5 seconds later, but
Right.
in the brief moment where she said he just said Aegon, I think Rhaenyra started to doubt herself. I think she was genuinely wondering, am I doing the right thing here by pressing this claim? If my dad really wanted Aegon to be king and stuff like that, then why am I doing this? Why am I sending dragons to death, my sons to death, thousands of people to die for me to
I
press a
mean, yeah,
claim
you're
that
right
even my
because she
father
has been
didn't
very.
want in the end?
She's been trying to think about peace this entire time, and doubt did come in. Sorry, it's a Hades Sound song. Uh, doubt came in, and I wouldn't be surprised if you did choose to do it. Maybe I'm just thinking for myself. I'm kind of projecting onto Rhaenyra because I feel like you gotta keep going. I'm just like Allison. Too far. So we're too far in. We gotta keep going. I do.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think they have gone too far. Steve, what did you think of the Scepter Rhaenyra scene, the last scene, the conversation with Rhaenyra and
I,
Alicent?
I think the actor, I think like the actors knocked it out of the park with what they were given. Was I a fan? Was I a fan of it? Not really. It kind of just put some. It took me back to, like the white scene kind of stuff. Like this is such a. It's. I didn't think it was. I don't think like people of that caliber can afford to make. Ca- would even think about making silly plans like this. Uh, and especially like, sure, they said that, oh, if you're dressed as a nun, nobody really cares who's, like, who nobody really looks at small folk and stuff like that. Sure, but is that really the chance you want to take? You know,
I mean, they
and
did sort of allude to it in earlier in the episode, if you remember, when Ulf was talking to them and they were like, "Does anybody really know what Daemon looks like and stuff like that? Does anyone really
yeah,
know what
that's a
these
good point, I
Targaryens
guess.
look like?"
Yeah, yeah,
I think they were sort
I
of
did. Yeah.
foreshadowing that this was going to happen at the end of the episode. Is that these the royals are so detached from the small folk on both sides. I think that none of
Mm,
them would really be able to recognize, the monarch and stuff like that, even
yeah.
if they were walking next to them. If they were dressed like not in royal clothes, like Mazaria says, then people don't really pay that much attention, especially if you're not like a famous face and stuff like that. And I think
True, but
because
still, like, what are the chances there's going to be some other religious person who is part of royalty who happen to be praying at the same time? That could happen, right?
Mm.
But anyway, like I am kind of relieved that this is the closing chapter on the the prophecy mistake thing, kind of. That was
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
one
think
of
they
agree.
needed
yeah. I'm glad
go for it.
they've like neatly closed that off. Like, yeah.
Go for it, Sarah. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I think a lot of the some of the problems or the bad vibes that people are getting from the scene would have been maybe I just got the wrong impression. Would have been a little alleviated if they had framed why she had done that a little better. Because at least to me, it did seem like I think that was why she went. She went there in order to try to like get Allison to like stop this madness, right? But I think it made a little bit more inner sense. It still wouldn't have been smart, but made more sense if she went there kind of for her own like personal assurance, right? Like she wanted to know the truth. And she knew she could do that by talking to Allison before she nosedived in. I
Yeah,
realized
see,
that that
that would
also
have made
has
more. Yeah,
issues
I can go
because
with that. Yeah.
my biggest like about it is like I don't know why. Okay, I know that Rhaenyra probably views Allison as like the head of the opposing side, right? But Rhaenyra isn't dumb. She knows how people view women, right? That's her whole issue. That's her whole fight. So I don't really know why logically she would think that Allison still has any power in this situation, like real power. I that was my main But if we frame it in a way that she went there because she needed like personal closure, I think it works more. Like it is a little silly, but we do some silly things sometimes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I wonder what the letter said because we don't get to see everything that the letter said, but I can imagine a few things that could have been said in that letter that could have got Rhaenyra to go or gave her the impression that maybe Alicent could do something, Who really knows what was in that letter? It could have even had like terms or maybe things, so who knows? Maybe that's what got Rainier to let her guard down enough so that she would go. She must have something must have made her believe that there was a chance with Alicent. And also, if not Alicent, who? There is no
I think
one else. There's no one else that's gonna listen to her. Nobody's going to.
yeah, there
I
isn't.
would like no one's gonna listen to her. There anybody else kills her on spot. Anybody else. So and that too, like that was I feel like the scariest part just because it would have that was I feel like when she was in the most danger is when Alicent recognized her. Who cares if the small folk, they're never gonna notice her, but the second Alicent's like Rhaenyra, what is she gonna do if she's like sees her? How many times did we see Cersei like power is power, get him, like it could have been over all right then. It blows my mind, but the reverse wouldn't be true, like Rhaenyra, if she would have done something to Alicent, like it doesn't change anything. But I feel like she
oh
didn't have any
boy.
other option.
Yeah,
She was really the only person realistically that she could have talked to.
Yeah, at the
I think
beginning of the scene, I was like, Allison, you might want to take the L. Just scream, have her, have her kill you. Think about your family. Just take the L.
I think the interesting question that's sort of thrown up by this scene, especially by what Allison sort of says at the end, where she's sort of like it's too late, and stuff like that, is I think both of these women are starting to sort of realize that the men that surround them have sort of snuck away the power from under their noses and stuff like that. And so the things are
Oh
happening
yeah.
now. Things are happening now that are out of their control, and neither one of them, like for instance, Damon doing what he did with Blood and Cheese, and now Allison's like, oh well, I can't do anything because Cole's already gone to war. My son's probably going to follow him. They're already taking the dragons. Like they're being left behind. Allison and
Yeah.
Rhaenyra are being left behind because they're not on the front lines, and these men that they're sort of employing to do their dirty work are taking the reins for themselves, pretty much.
Right.
So I
hmm
think they're both sort of coming to terms with the fact that they don't hold the cards in this situation anymore. And I think Rhaenyra probably didn't even really know that going in. I think she thought that maybe Aegon was still the same Aegon from last season, the one that she
Yeah.
was familiar with, who was like, "Oh, I don't want to be king. You can be king." But obviously, she
Yeah.
hasn't seen the sort of change that Aegon has gone through in the sort of couple of episodes that we've had of this season, where he's really sort of started to see himself more as king and take on like the sort of authority, I guess you could say, that a king would have and stuff. And I think she sort of isn't prepared for knowing that. So now she realizes that Alicent doesn't hold the cards and can't do anything
Yeah.
about this. And so I think now Rhaenyra is going away from King's Landing thinking, well, we have to go to war. And it's going to be interesting to see how the sort of that meeting. I think it had to happen. As much as people hated it, I think that meeting and the things that were
Yeah,
said in that meeting had to happen
Right.
because
I
because
agree.
now it seems like it's a closing of a chapter. It feels like we've ended this whole peace thing. We've ended the whole trying to prevent the war, and now we're gonna have the battles. We're gonna have the dragon fights.
Mhm.
We're gonna have the things that are outside of the two protagonists' control, and we're just gonna see it all sort of spiral out of control now while it's in the hands of these men like Aegon and Cole and Daemon and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be
And
Yeah,
interesting to see.
especially
it's
from a TV
goodbye.
show standpoint, they have set up Allison and Rhaenyra as like the leads, really, in their own way. It is starting to become more
Yeah.
of a everybody is a part, but they kind of need them to have something every episode. They need the girls to be doing something, but also like they are kind of the main emotional kind of relationship that we are seeing throughout these
Mhm.
years. Like their relationship is the core of most of these issues. So I think it would be slightly odd if we never really did get like closure in a way on that, because maybe I don't know exactly, because if they just go into war until the end, I don't know how many chances they'll
Mhm.
have to meet up and
Well, they
really
gotta
girl
draw.
on girl
They
Mm.
gotta
talk.
draw us in. Gotta draw us in there so we can be
All right,
devastated.
well,
It's like goodbye, princess and queen, and hello, fire and blood, baby.
hello, Fire and Blood. Well, I think that will draw it to a close. I think we've covered thoroughly episode 3, so I want to thank everyone for staying in here this long. Obviously, this is really weird having to do this for the first time by myself because Loretti is usually here to be directing discussion and stuff like that, and obviously I've had to step in because we haven't really had the mods around.
I think you
But
did
it's been
great.
really
You did a
Yeah, this
great
was
it's been
Yeah,
really
great.
job.
nice.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Especially, I mean, I had no idea this was even happening a couple of hours ago. So it's interesting to sort of be thrown in at the deep end and have to conduct this discussion. And as you guys were talking, I sort of remembered more and more bits about the episode because at the beginning I was like, what actually did happen in episode 3? I don't even remember. But yeah, I mean we're going into, I mean if anybody has seen the trailers, we're going into a battle episode next
Oh yeah,
episode. And
it's gonna
and
be devastating.
it's gonna be fire and blood. It's gonna be a dance of dragons. And so I'm looking forward to it. Hope you guys are all looking forward to it. But I think we'll call the discussion
Yes,
here. And be sure to
thank
come
you.
back next week when Loretti will hopefully be here and we'll have a bit bigger of an audience as well, hopefully. Because it's gonna be a big one next weekend. So
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'll be back. I want to see
The
y'all go
have
off
a
yapper,
great
about that.
evening.
the yapper on her way back.
Yeah, no, I'll
Have a
take a
great
back
evening,
seat next
everybody.
time. But
Have a
take
good
care.
day.
All right, thanks.
Bye
Bye,
Ciao.
bye.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye
Take care,
bye.
guys.